everybody. Welcome to Lighthouse Kids live stream. Hey, what's up everybody? I'm so glad to see you. Why am I squinting? Sometimes it can be hard to see, so we have to squint our eyes in order to focus. Faith is kind of like that. In order for us to see God, we sometimes have to focus and take a closer look, especially since we can't see God. So all this month, we're talking about faith. You've probably heard that word before. Faith can move mountains, take a leap of faith, keep the faith. We can't see God, but we can read His words, and we can learn from the people that came before us. The writer of Hebrews explains faith this way. Check it out. Faith is being sure of what we hope for. It is being sure of what we do not see. That is what the people of long ago were praised for. We can learn so much from the people that came before us because they had the faith. After all, they lived in a broken world just like we did, and they had to be trusting in Jesus. The writer of Hebrews reminds us of some of God's people, like Abraham and Moses. God told Abraham to move his entire family. Abraham at this time was getting really old. At the time, Abraham and Sarah didn't have any kids, but God told him He was going to change that. Check out what the Bible has to say. Go from your country, go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great. You will be a blessing to others. All nations on earth will be blessed because of you. You see, God had a plan to send a rescuer. Jesus was one of Abraham's great, and even greater grandsons. Abraham had God's promise, but he still didn't see. Still, he trusted and he left home and followed what God had directed him to do. Because of Abraham's faith, other people in his family along the way would have strong faith. People like Isaac, Jacob, Joseph, they all chose to have big faith in God. God also spoke to Moses from a burning bush. Even though Moses was raised by the Pharaoh's daughter, he chose to stand with his people against the Pharaoh. He bravely led God's people, the Israelites, to freedom. I've just told you a few of the people that the writer of Hebrews listed as faithful people. The writer revealed so many people of faith that he actually stopped listing the names because there were so many. But we can't forget David. God promised David that he would be king. But he wasn't king for a long time. He waited several years. He believed what God promised him. Eventually, God did make him a king, and David became the greatest king. None of God's people could see with their own eyes God's plan. Instead, they saw how God worked in their life, and they chose to believe His greater plan. That's called faith. But here's where things get interesting. We know today that God was going to send a Savior and that He was going to send Jesus. But out of all the people we read about all the people that the author of Hebrews listed, and all the people in the Old Testament, how many of them do you think saw God's plan come to life? Zero. Zilch. Nada. The writer of Hebrews even talks about it. All those people were praised because they had faith, but none of them revealed what God had promised. That's because God's plan had something better for us. Did you hear that last part? God's plan had something better for us. God's plan included all of us, all the way back to creation. You see, God always had a plan to send a rescuer. He always had a plan to send Jesus. Jesus showed us who God was. He showed us and taught us to love God and love one another. When He was killed on the cross, His friends thought that the story was over. But God raised Him back to life. Because of Jesus' death, and resurrection, we can all live with Jesus forever. We can follow Jesus even though we don't see him. Because of Jesus' death and resurrection, we can all be with him forever. We can follow Jesus even though we can't see him. Think about the early believers like Peter and John and the other ones that followed Jesus. They saw him heal. They heard him teach. They saw him after God raised him from the dead. They saw him go up to heaven, and they still held on to that faith. Because of what the new Christians in the early church had seen, they could believe in what they couldn't see. They didn't see the end of the story, but they kept the faith. And because they kept the faith, we can keep our faith. So the bottom line today is that you can know Jesus and you can follow him even though you can't see him. Let's talk to God now and thank him. Dear God, thank you for all the examples we see in the Bible and that we read about people of faith. It's so cool to read about Abraham, Moses, and David, and the people who followed Jesus when he was alive. All of those people chose to have faith in you, even if they couldn't always see the bigger plan. Please help each of us to trust Jesus even though we can't see him. We love you and we ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next Sunday at 5 p.m. at Lighthouse Kids live stream.